Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by the following. Indiana University's Center for Applied Cybersecurity Research, presenting Security Matters, with tips for improving online security in 3 minutes or less. Main Source Bank, headquartered in Greensburg, Indiana, offering products and services to fit every stage of life. More information at mainsourcebank.com. Main Source, life needs a great bank. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Smithville Communications, serving Southern Indiana with high-speed fiber gigabit internet. Smithville Fiber Gigabit Technology. Tap the power.
And by WTIU members. Thank you.
Coming up on Indiana News Desk, new Indiana laws are now in effect. We'll go through some of the ones you should know. 9 of those laws provide additional protections for veterans, but some question how one law that's designed to protect veterans from discrimination will be enforced.
Unless they come out and directly tell you that you're being discriminated against or that you're not being hired because of your status as a veteran, I kind of neglect to see how they can actually enforce it.
Plus, you've heard of the new standards the EPA wants to place on coal mining companies. How are Indiana communities that rely on coal industry bracing for the potential impact?
The community would continue, but it wouldn't thrive like it is. It could rapidly become a ghost town.
Those stories plus an update on this week's top stories right now on Indiana News Desk. Hello, I'm Joe Wren, and welcome to Indiana News Desk. The Indiana General Assembly passed 224 laws this year, most of which went into effect July 1st to correspond with the fiscal year. Here's a look at a few of those. Lawmakers are creating a pre-K pilot program. It won't go into effect until the 2015 school year, but the 5 participating counties will be selected this month. It could provide money for up to 4,500 low-income children to attend high-quality preschools. The legislation also created a commission to track the children's progress through the 3rd grade. The overhaul of the state's criminal code aims to better match crimes to their sentences and to save the state money by keeping people out of prison. The first version of the bill was passed in 2013, but its implementation was delayed until July 1st. Lawmakers worked out additional details this year, particularly how to pay for more local community corrections programs, which will see more offenders under the new law.
And so if we can scale up those mental health programs, so instead of being in a local jail or a state prison, they can actually be in a treatment program where we can hopefully find the right medications and keep them on them, then they can become productive citizens and lead decent lives. And that's a lot better than having them continually cycling in and out of the criminal justice system.
The law allocates more than $11 million to county community corrections programs. The legislature will likely allocate more money next year. Indiana is implementing new measures to prevent concussions. Previous legislation required schools to tell parents about the possible risk of concussion in all sports, and if an athlete is suspected of having a concussion, he's not allowed to return to play until he's received a written clearance. The new law mandates concussion education for both high school and youth football coaches. Energize Indiana, the state's program that was designed to encourage energy efficiency programs, went away July 1st. Governor Mike Pence says he was concerned about increasing utility costs, but Pence has also said he is dedicated to energy efficiency and is seeking a new program to replace Energizing Indiana. And the legislature passed 9 bills addressing the needs of veterans. Among the measures is one that underscores a federal law making it illegal for employers to discriminate against veterans based on their status as a veteran. The new law has gotten widespread support, but as Sarah Whitmire reports, some question how it will be enforced.
Jared Jordan was 22 years old. College hadn't really worked out, and the only jobs he could land were in retail.
A friend of mine that I'd known for a pretty good many years, he was already in the military and kept telling me about the benefits and finally we sat down one day and he signed me up and I joined in and haven't looked back.
Jordan was sent to Iraq, assigned to the 90th Aviation Support Battalion, overseeing maintenance on helicopters. Jordan calls his 4 years in the Army a great experience. He says he got to see a lot, meet a lot of great people, and learn a lot. In 2012, he came back to Indiana.
I'd like to think I adjusted a little bit better than some, but it took time. It wasn't something I could just come back in and flip the switch and all right, now I'm back to being Joe Civilian.
Jordan saw a counselor and got treatment for what he calls mild PTSD. Jordan also enrolled at Indiana University and began work on his kinesiology degree. And during that time, he tried to find a few jobs.
No one's been rude or anything like that to my face. I usually get the email or the letter in the mail, 2 or 3 weeks afterward, thanks for your application, but at this time we don't require your services, or whatever vernacular they choose to describe it in.
Yet they have some experiences that are unique to them with areas of responsibility that you have a 25-year-old that doesn't have a college degree but was in charge of 45 people under combat conditions.
Ultimately, Jordan decided to enter the reserves and take a job with his unit in Kentucky. Jim Brown sees a lot of cases like Jordan's. There are about 240,000 veterans in Indiana's workforce, but there are about 13,000 who are unemployed, and at least that many, if not double, Brown says, who are underemployed. The VA works to connect veterans with skills training so they can get jobs after they leave the military.
What we're seeing with them is that they are obviously very highly skilled individuals and very highly in areas that employers are looking for. They understand how to show up on time and in the right uniform, and that's something that employers are looking for right now. So now we're just matching up those veterans with employers.
What the new law does is hold employers accountable. They're not allowed to dismiss a veteran from consideration for a position simply because of that person's military background.
I think when you couple the time constraint, the perceived commitment constraint, and then the things like those of us that are returning combat veterans, that the PTSD stigma, that I think that it puts a barrier up, that we go in and yes, we've got all these great skills and we've got all this great leadership experience, and we can operate in environments of stress that most people can't even imagine.
The new law applies not only to the armed forces, but also members of the National Guard and the reserves.
I'm glad that they're passing the legislation. I hope it works, but I kind of want to know the how behind it, and that's what I haven't really heard much of. Unless they come out and directly tell you that you're being discriminated against, or that you're not being hired because of your status as a veteran, I kind of neglect to see how they can actually enforce it.
The Indiana Civil Rights Commission is charged with investigating alleged complaints and with enforcing the new law. If the agency determines an employer did discriminate against a veteran, the veteran can be placed in the position which they applied to and were denied.
Sarah Whitmire joins us now for more on this story. I think, Sarah, we just heard, that's the question, the how. Will this be enforced? Does the state have any more plans to try and implement this a little bit better?
There's not a lot of information on how it would be implemented, but part of it falls on employers. They're required to let applicants know of this new law. And then if a veteran goes through the interview process and thinks they've been discriminated against, then they can file that complaint with the Indiana Civil Rights Commission, who can then launch an investigation. It's important to note they have to do that within the guidelines of the federal law, because there is a federal law, the Uniform Services Employment and Reemployment Act. So the state law basically just mirrors that federal law.
So then what should that job applicant do if they feel like that they've been discriminated against?
Right, so they contact the Indiana Civil Rights Commission, and then if they determine there's been a problem, then they can go in actually, and if they decide that there's been this violation, then they can fine the employer. Even they can reward damages to the veteran, and like we mentioned earlier, they can also put that veteran in the position for which he applied.
Now, is there a certain age group that this affects more than another?
Yeah, we don't have numbers on discrimination, but for unemployment numbers, it affects those post 9/11 veterans, those 18 to 24-year-olds who are coming back who maybe left high school early, left college early, and now they're competing against all of these folks who are trying to get entry-level jobs, and they're having a hard time, as many as 20%.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Now for headlines, we go over to Alex Dirkman, who has an update on this week's top stories.
Thank you, Joe. The Supreme Court's ruling this week on a contraceptives case involving Hobby Lobby could indicate how a Notre Dame lawsuit is likely to play out. The court ruled that Hobby Lobby and other for-profit companies are allowed to object for religious reasons to the Affordable Care Act's contraceptives mandate. The justices note the Obama administration has created an alternative for nonprofit religious institutions, including churches and private universities. Under that exemption, the organization can fill out a form stating their opposition to providing contraceptives. Then insurance companies or third-party administrators will take on the cost of the coverage.
So in essence, the court says that the exemption given to Notre Dame and other nonprofits basically provides the alternative by which the government can give insurance coverage even to women employees of Hobby Lobby without violating the religious beliefs of Hobby Lobby. Basically, that suggests, at least on its face, that the alternative that the government is giving to Notre Dame is okay.
In February, a federal appeals court ruled against Notre Dame and required the university to comply with the Affordable Care Act's birth control requirement. The federal government will recognize the marriages of hundreds of same-sex couples who were wed last week in Indiana, but it's unclear whether the state will do the same. An appeals court last Friday put a stay on the lower court judge's order that struck down Indiana's same-sex marriage ban. The marriage of one couple, Nikki Kwasny and Amy Sandler, is being recognized. The appeals court ordered Indiana acknowledge their marriage because one of the women is terminally ill. The Indiana Department of Education has submitted its application for a waiver from aspects of the No Child Left Behind Act. The waiver would allow greater flexibility for how Hoosier schools use federal education funds. A decision is expected on the waiver by the end of July. Senator Joe Donnelly is urging state and federal officials to do more to increase financial literacy among members of the military. At a meeting this week, representatives from the U.S. Consumer Financial Protection Bureau agreed, saying veterans face unique financial situations.
There were some challenges. One was you had a lot of young spouses that weren't real experienced with managing money, so there were definitely some that got in difficulty. We saw issues of identity theft while the service members were deployed. And we saw some that were eligible to receive benefits because of their low income who actually saw those recalculated during deployment and lost money because there was supposedly one less person in the households.
Petraeus, the wife of General David Petraeus, says she plans to use the information she learned to better assist veterans through social media campaigns, online Q&As, and the Bureau's financial assistance phone line. Personal information from more than 160,000 students, faculty, staff, and alumni was compromised after hackers gained access to Butler University's computer network. According to officials, hackers could have accessed names, bank account information, and social security numbers. Butler is offering a year of free credit monitoring services for those affected by the breach. And state and local communities are negotiating an agreement with Chicago-based rail company Corridor Capital to operate the Hoosier State Passenger Rail Line. Federal funding for the line, which runs between Indianapolis and Chicago, ran out last year, and the state has been courting proposals for a new operator. In a statement, Corridor Capital said it's aiming to take over operations in October.
All right, thank you very much, Alex.
You're welcome.
Coming up next on Indiana Newsdesk. EPA regulations seek to cut down on carbon emissions, but residents in Southwest Indiana worry the new rules could cost them their jobs. And a golf course reopens in Owen County after being shut down for 9 months. These stories right here on Indiana Newsdesk.
I can change the world with my own 2 hands, make it a better place with my own 2 hands. I'm gonna make it a brighter place with my own 2 hands. I'm gonna help the human race with my own 2 hands. hold you in my own two hands, and I can comfort you with my own two hands, with my own two hands.
Welcome back to Indiana Newsdesk. I'm Joe Wren. A few weeks ago, we told you about new regulations the Environmental Protection Agency is proposing. The agency wants to cut carbon emissions nationally 30% by 2030. In Indiana, that would mean a 20% drop in emissions within the next 15 years. That goal could have significant implications. The EPA says it will mean better air quality and therefore fewer health problems. But as Gretchen Frazee reports, some worry it could devastate local communities built around the mining industry.
Southwestern Indiana is dotted with small towns where front yards are decorated with American flags and yard signs that read "Proud Union Home" and "Count on Coal." Nearly everyone here is associated with the coal mining industry, or at least knows someone who is.
What we're looking at is a rail loading facility where they bring 120 empty rail cars with 3 engines, and we load approximately 116 tons of coal on each rail car.
John Stacura is the vice president of Solar Sources Underground. His company is a middleman in the coal industry. Each day, its 4 employees load coal from the mines into train cars, where it's then shipped off to nearby power plants. Every year, they load more than 2 million tons of coal, but that's less than half the amount they could be shipping.
Solar Sources has infrastructure and permits in place that we could mine between 5 and 5.2 million tons of coal a year if the contracts were there.
Solar Sources Underground also has a permit to mine the land just west of this facility, but the land is sitting untouched. Stacura says they aren't mining for the same reason they aren't shipping out more coal. There isn't enough demand. And Stacura blames that on one thing, the EPA.
It's not just us, it's becoming a regulation nation. You know, at one point in time, coal mining was fun. It's not so much fun anymore.
Stacura says forcing power plants to reduce the amount of coal they burn has a domino effect.
They get cut back, we get cut back. I've got 350 outside trucks that come in here per day, outside contractors. So that's outside jobs. We get affected, they'll be affected.
Gary Gentry is the Knox County Development Corporation president. He says there are 9 counties in southwest Indiana with coal deposits that have been mined.
In this county, mining is the second highest paying job category that we have, second only to utilities, which of course the coal supplies most of the power source for those utility companies, so it's integral to our economy.
Gentry says he understands there could be benefits to the climate and to air quality if EPA regulations go into effect, but he worries about the impact on utility costs and jobs. That impact, economist Timothy Slaper says, is impossible to know.
That's the $64,000 question, or maybe $64 billion question, because I don't think anybody really knows.
But Slaper says the EPA regulations aren't the only thing to blame. Free market factors such as the cost of natural gas also play a major role. Natural gas prices have plummeted in recent years as fracking is opening up a large supply of natural gas. In the meantime, coal prices have increased. That means more power plants, including several in Indiana, are switching to natural gas.
If that is a huge trend, and we have fertilizer plants that are using it as a feedstock, and if we are planning on exporting it to Japan in ships, you know, suddenly it's not going to be $4 a 1,000 cubic feet for gas. It's going to be, you know, closer to 6, closer to 7, closer to that break-even point where, well, maybe gas isn't that much less expensive, all things considered, than coal.
In the meantime, power plants are still being forced to cut their emissions. And in the short term, the easiest way to do that is to burn less coal. While some companies like Solar Sources Underground are looking at shipping more coal overseas to make up that difference, the drop in demand could still have an impact on a large range of workers, from those working in the power plants to the miners who are on, or in some cases, in the ground, every day digging up coal.
At our particular mine.
But retired mining engineer A.J. Mason says the coal industry has been here before.
This one actually was used to clean the coal at Blackfoot Mine. That was up by Coal, where the little town you came through.
Today, Mason runs the Museum of the Coal Industry in Linville. But 45 years ago, in 1969, he was just entering the mining industry as a mechanic for the Enos Old Bend Coal Company. 1 year later, the EPA was created, and soon after that, the federal government started enforcing new environmental standards.
And I kept hearing, companies keep saying, we got to mine the coal cheaper. We got to mine the coal cheaper. And then there was for a while that we had a lot more days off than we had. Then it picked up again.
One of the biggest challenges came in the late 1970s, when Congress labeled sulfur dioxide as a pollutant and forced power plants to find a way to remove the sulfur from coal or face closure.
And the environmentalists said that we had to clean up the coal stacks and clean up the pollution in the air, and that was a big expense that most of the coal-fired power plants has done. They've done that. They put the scrubbers on the power plants and made the coal feasible to burn. We moved right along, and hopefully we will again.
The EPA proposal is in the middle of a public comment period. It's unlikely the agency will completely abandon the regulations, but it could tweak them based on the feedback it receives. Several states' leaders, including Indiana Governor Mike Pence, have also vowed to challenge the mandate in court. To talk more about the implications of the EPA regulations, we are joined by Kerwin Olson. He is the executive director of the Citizens Action Coalition, a nonprofit organization that advocates for energy policy reform in Indiana. Thanks for being here. I do want to start, though, by saying representatives from energy companies were not able to make it on this program, but the Indiana Statewide Association of Rural Electric Cooperatives did provide us a statement regarding their stance on this issue. They say the electric cooperatives are urging the EPA to work with us on these regulations to limit the impact on your electric bill and Indiana's economy while finding a common sense solution to leave our children a cleaner planet. The strict proposed regulations threaten to increase electric bills dramatically and risk thousands of jobs. We need to find the right balance between affordability, reliability, and a clean world. And Kerwin, we hear this a lot. They're not opposed to clean air, but they're trying to find that balance. Is there a balance?
Absolutely, there's a balance, and we believe the Obama administration has struck that balance in this proposed regulation. It's very modest from our perspective, if not a little bit too weak. The proposal provides a varied menu of options that electric providers can choose from to comply with these regulations, as well as a 15-year time frame almost in order to reduce our emissions just a mere 20%, which many, like myself, believe is not enough.
Well, and you speak of the 15 years. Some say that that time is not enough. Do you think that if the time was longer, that maybe some of these power companies could come up with more of a new technology to help with those regulations rather than just burning less coal?
Not at all. The technology exists today. There are off-the-shelf, affordable energy efficiency measures that can be implemented today at a very low cost. Wind power is now competitive with both coal and natural gas, and solar is quickly approaching competitive levels with those technologies as well. So we believe the technology is readily available today, and the time frame should even be shortened.
Now, as we heard in the story, more coal may be shipped overseas if the EPA regulations do go into effect. Doesn't that kind of negate what the EPA is trying to do? And in other words, they're just kind of moving the coal to another, even though it's global, rather than reducing coal usage?
Without question. I mean, there has to be some responsibility on part of the rest of the world to address carbon emissions as well. But we need to lead by example, and we need to take the leadership role that the United States can play in this, and show the world that reductions can occur at a low cost to the public.
We have just about 30 seconds, but one more question about utility cost. We heard that these costs are not just for residents, but for businesses as well. Indiana touts energy, come to Indiana. Are there other things that the state can do to try to help reduce energy?
Well, the reality is that energy costs in Indiana have increased dramatically over the last 10 years, and most of those increases are due to our over-reliance on coal. So we believe these regulations and shifting away from coal and diversifying our portfolio will actually reduce the cost of utility bills in our state and make our state more competitive and attractive.
All right, thank you very much for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
If you're looking for something to do this 4th of July weekend, a golf course in Owen County is reopening after being shut down for the past 9 months. The former manager died last year, and there's been an ongoing battle about who should take over. Essex Golf Management Company started managing Rolling Meadows in May, and residents young and old say they're happy to have the course back.
I think people should come out here and play because I think it'll be really nice.
Only the front 9 holes are playable right now, and the back 9 are expected to be ready in the next few weeks. That's the end of this program, but our work continues online as we cover the news in southern Indiana throughout the week at WTIUnews.org. Have a great holiday weekend.
Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by the following. Indiana University's Center for Applied Cybersecurity Research, presenting Security Matters, with tips for improving online security in 3 minutes or less. Main Source Bank, headquartered in Greensburg, Indiana, offering products and services to fit every stage of life. More information at mainsourcebank.com. Main Source, life needs a great bank. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Smithville Communications, serving southern Indiana with high-speed fiber gigabit internet. Smithville Fiber Gigabit Technology. Tap the power.
And by WTIU members. Thank you.